Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we will be looking at the Monticelli trap, which is named after the Italian Grandmaster. And it was actually a game that was played where he was playing with the white pieces, and it's a very good trap if you're sort of trying to get some sort of middle game advantage over black. And although you do get an exchange because it is a trap, black has an even compensation. So I'll also be showing how black can counter if he ever gets stuck in this. So the game starts off with normal d4, knight to f6, and this trap can come about in many ways, but I think this is the most clear way that it comes about. You have c4, e6, knight to f3, and you kind of get, after bishop to b4 check, you're getting some sort of Nimzo Indian vibes. After bishop to d2 takes, queen takes, and after b6, it's kind of going into the Bogo Indian defense with black. So obviously, the way to counter this would be to play the g3 variation, and after bishop b7, bishop to g2, black castles, and here you play the move knight to c3, and till this position rises, it's very good position for white, I'd say. He's completed all his minor piece developments. His queen's also moved, so after castling, his rooks will be connected on f1 and a1. So he's kind of, developed all his pieces, and he can continue with his middle game. But black usually have this cheeky kind of defense, which is knight to e4. And here usually I see a lot of players just take, and after it takes, they continue about their normal lives, castle, or whatever move they find suitable. But the move that Monticelli played in the game back then was the move queen to c2. And honestly, I think this trap can also work if you play queen to d3. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But the iconic kind of move was queen to c2. And what is the idea of this move? Well, for starters, if you notice, getting your queen out of harm's way is always good. You don't want to lose your queen to the knight. Secondly, it's also for those people who don't want to exchange their knight. And one thing you'll realize is you have an option of playing something like f5, but the other thing you can do is go back knight to f6, because if you take knight takes c3, that's where you fall into the trap. And after knight takes c3, although if you might see it shows blue, that means it's perfectly fine. I'll tell you exactly why I feel it's not fine. The move knight to g5. And what is the idea here? Well, for starters, you're aiming at queen takes f7 checkmate. So the only move that black can do to save it is take on g5. What do you do then? You take bishop takes b7, and although it may look like, obviously here bishop takes b7 is the only move, and after a move like knight takes e2, queen takes e2, knight to c6, bishop takes a8, rook takes a8. White is an exchange up, as you realize, but let's count the pawns for a second. White has 7 pawns, and black has all his 8 pawns, which is not that good of a sight to see. Second thing, white's king is kind of exposed, and sure, he can castle, but in the endgame that isn't that good of an option. And first thing is that he has a lot of weaknesses. He has a lot of kind of hanging pawns lying about. This is not the best pawn structure to have when you've exchanged your bishop. You don't have any minor pieces on the board. These the pawn on d4 and c4 are kind of targets, and that's one of the ways that black gets his compensation. Firstly, by, as I said, in this position, the compensation is that obviously one pawn and the position he puts your king in. Obviously, there can be other continuations, like knight to e4, which is considered as the best one. even though it doesn't make that much of a difference after takes, queen takes e4, queen takes g5, the only move, queen takes a8, knight to c6, and queen to b7. You have something like knight takes d4 coming up, and after rook to d1, something like queen to e5. And this is actually the best response black can give. And even though you're an exchange up, black has, again, only one pawn as compensation, but now you realize you're under heavy fire from black. There's this immediate threat, which you have to make some sort of modifications, and eventually, let's say you play something like e3, which is I think the only move, something like knight to c2 check, king to e2, and this kind of weakens your position even more. So that's one of the reasons why black actually is willing to play this position. Sometimes black willingly goes knight to e4 and takes on c3 because he likes to play this position. And obviously it isn't the best position, and if you're let's say on a range from 1000 rated to 1600, 700, I surely don't recommend this because you'll end up losing in the end game. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. But at a higher level, like a GM level, GMs don't mind playing exchange down. It's not a big deal for them, especially when it's for this heavy compensation. I mean, for them, this position, knight to e4, takes, this is good enough compensation for them to even try to win the game. But I did go through the statistics of recent games, and I kind of found out that all the high level players, like I'm talking about super GMs and GMs like Capablanca and all those players, either white ended up winning the game, but that was mostly at like 2200 rated and below, and that's the reason why I can recommend this trap if you're not a complete professional. But so below 2200, like these type of positions, white ended up winning. Well, it's for the fact that, if you're lower rated, you won't have that much experience. I'm not saying you're not skilled enough, but you won't have that experience, and therefore you won't know how to deal with an endgame where you're already material down. But for grandmasters, like as I said, most of the games white was winning, but out of about the 20-30 top rated games I saw, I don't think I even saw one game where black was winning. It was either white winning or white the game ending in a draw. And I'd say only about like a handful of games was where white was winning, and most of the games this position ended up in a draw. And that's why black actually doesn't mind playing this position. Like right now, I'm currently on the opening book. I cannot show it to you guys on the screen. I'm on the reference on my mega database, and this position itself, about 8 games out of 10 is a draw in this position. And if I just go back to this position just before knight e4 is played, depending on what black plays, I get a lot more games coming up and that's where you see all the GMs. And the first game is Aronian, which he won, but that was because he's Aronian. And the next about 10 games ended up in draws, and that's what I mean. The proportion of wins to draws is a huge margin, and a lot of games end up in a draw, but that's at the GM level. So if you are in the mid-range of ratings, about 1700, 1800, I suggest, sure, you can always go for this trap because you're not actually leaving the comfort of your position. I mean, if things go sideways, you can always go back to your original position. It's not like you've made some drastic changes to your position, so that's always there. Anyways, guys, that was the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Do hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.